Hi class, welcome in. Today we are going to be talking a little bit more about macromolecules. Last class we delved a little bit deeper into nucleic acids in video form. So today we are going to start the class off with a video on biological molecules. So let me get that queued up for you guys right now. So I'll share it on our Google Meet, and I will project it to class now so they can see it on the screen too. Alright, so let me play that for you right now. Hello, welcome to the kitchen. Okay, so, wow, so he used carbohydrates as the bread, he used proteins as the egg, and he used the peanut butter as the lipid to make a really gross sandwich, right? But it did contain the things that we need to survive. And I know a lot of this stuff we've kind of gone over before, but he delved a little bit deeper into, the structure of the lipids and, how the phospholipid bilayer is a little bit different than our triglycerides. And he also touched a little bit on carbohydrates, which, I understand has been a little bit of a confusing topic. No, not carbohydrates, sorry, cholesterol, which I understand is a little bit confusing just because it looks a little bit different than other lipids, although it is one. So I was happy to see that he still touched on that. All right, so with that in mind, we are going to move on to our next activity, which is in Canvas. Here, let me show you where that can be found. So it's in Canvas, and it is the Macromolecule card sort summary table. So those of you in class, I'll have you go on Google Meet as well, and I'll explain why in a second. So we're going to open this up here. All right, and then we'll pop this open. And we should look at this macromolecule sorting activity summary. We see the objective is to learn how to identify and sort information examples about the 4 major biological macromolecules. So you'll see what I mean in a second. And now for you in the ARC program, you're going to pretend like this wasn't already kind of completed. Okay. As you could probably guess, we did this in class. Okay, and yeah, we'll shuffle these around a little bit more. Again, for ARC, I'm sorry, but this is supposed to be empty. All right, back to the students. So, what you see here is a table that has the 4 major macromolecules that we've been learning about in class, right? And we see up on top, we see monomer, picture, function, and examples, and we see a lot of different words out there, a lot of different vocabulary that we've kind of talked about a little bit. You see some examples, you see some pictures of molecules that we've seen some of these before. In the notes we saw those, and a lot of those we were able to see a little bit of in the video as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick on a student to start. Now, unfortunately, they kind of, they're, going first, so they're going to get kind of cold called here. But they have the benefit of having any of these to pick where they go. And then when you're done, what I'm going to have you do is pick on another student, right, to go next. Now, I know that sounds like a lot of pressure, and again, now you're having your friends and your peers call on you and stuff, but if it gets to the point where you don't really know where one of these goes, and, later on when there's fewer to pick from, it might start getting a little bit tricky, you can always pass it on. Okay, so if you don't get it, go ahead and pass it on. Otherwise, do your best, take a minute or two when you called on to find one that you know, where it goes, and let me know where to put it. Okay, so let's get started. All right, Austin. Well, okay, before I start, everybody, what I'm having you do is raise your hands on Meet. So once you're called on and gave an answer, you can put your hand down just so we don't get any repeats if we can help it. We want to get everybody involved. All right, so Austin, you heard me say your name. I'm going to have you go first, just because you're sitting close to me in the classroom here. So why don't you look at this selection of pictures and words, and let me know where you think they ought to go.
I'm gonna say fats is an example for lipids.
Okay. Yeah, we know that that fats. You know, when I think of lipids, I think of fats. That is basically just what they are in a big form. When I think of butter, I'm thinking of lipids, and I'm also thinking of fats. So those are ways you can kind of tie those in together. All right, good job, Austin. Go ahead and call on somebody else and put your hand down on meat there.
I'm gonna call on Grace.
All right, Grace, go ahead. Tell me where one of these go.
I think DNA is an example of nucleic acid.
All right, and how do you know that?
Because it's in the name, deoxyribonucleic acid.
Okay, right. So that is a good way to kind of remember that. That is what the Na stands for, is nucleic acid, and the deoxyribo we talked about a little bit is that D, and that's the sugar that's in DNA. So good job. All right, go ahead, Grace. Pick on somebody else.
I'm gonna pick on Chelsea.
All right, so Chelsea. I'm going to give you a little hint that unfortunately the first two students didn't get. As you can kind of see, you might be able to already tell, but they are color coded a little bit. So that might help you determine where they go. All right, so Chelsea, go ahead. Let me know where one of these goes.
I think amino acid is the monomer protein.
All right, you think or you're sure?
Sure.
Right, that is correct. So, as we kind of learned about, and the video talked about it a little bit, proteins are just a lot of different amino acids basically strung together, right? So, we know that the amino acid, they're held together with peptide bonds, and they build up to make the proteins in our body. All right, so Chelsea, go ahead, put your hand down on Google Meet, and go ahead and call on somebody else.
I pick Lexi.
All right, Lexi, go ahead. The pictures are getting a little bit bare. Those ones might be the easier ones, so maybe that's why you're kind of holding off on those.
I think the one with, let's see, the one with,
Take a second. No problem. But I don't want you to just think. I want you to look at this and know. Again, we kind of went over these in class. The video touched on them a little bit today as well.
that one with the ring.
This picture right here?
Yeah, is that one a carbohydrate?
Well, let's see. Is there anybody in class who wants to second that? Anybody want to back her up on that? I see some nodding heads. Yep, exactly. So that is a carbohydrate, right? So we learned about carbohydrates that a lot of times they're in a ring like this, especially when they are the monomer version of it. I don't want to say the name and give away one of these answers here, but when they are the singular version of this, they are in a ring, and you could also tell it's a carbohydrate by a lot of different oxygens. All right, so good job. So go ahead, Lexi, put your hand down on me and call on somebody else who you see their hand is up.
I'm calling Jasmine.
All right. So Jasmine, let's see if you can find one of these here. All right, Jasmine, you there? Okay. All right. Well, that's all right. Do you want Lexi just pick on somebody else? We'll come back around to her.
Okay, Bethany.
All right, Bethany. Go ahead. I see you're right there sitting in class, so I know you heard her call you. So go ahead.
Glucose is an example of a carbohydrate.
Right. Exactly. So tell me, do we have a picture of glucose somewhere on the screen? Anywhere?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do actually. So you're right. It is a sample there, and that could kind of help you deduce that this right here is a picture of glucose. And as we know, glucose is what our body needs. We're going to get into cell respiration a little bit more down the road, but glucose is what our body needs for cellular respiration to make the ATP we need. And again, we'll get into that a little bit more later on. Okay, awesome. Go ahead and call on somebody else here.
Madeline.
All right, Madeline, I don't know if you heard her, but in class she just called you, so go ahead and let me know where one goes.
Oils is an example of a lipid.
Right. So, what do you know? Just real quick, the difference between the oils, like vegetable oils, and fats like butter.
Yeah, oils are liquid at room temperature and fats are solid at room temperature.
Awesome. And just a little bit, referring to the video we just watched. Do you know why that is?
Because of the saturated bonds.
Wow. Yeah, exactly. So, awesome job. You were definitely paying attention. So, we saw that the reason that the unsaturated lipids were liquid was because they can't pack together as tightly as the ones that are saturated. So in the video, remember he showed the jar of peanut butter. So down below where the peanut butter was, it was more tightly compacted because it had more saturated fatty acids. Versus the liquid that was on top, which had more unsaturated ones. There was some unsaturated in the actual solid peanut butter, but the liquid form was almost entirely unsaturated fats up there. All right, great job. Um, so go ahead and call on somebody else here.
I'll call her Kristen.
All right, Kristen, let me know where one of these goes.
Oh, man, I don't know.
Well, that's okay if you're not really sure. Like I said, there's the color coding there, but if you're kind of looking at these and not really sure, then you could always pass it on, and it'll come back to me, and I'll call on somebody else.
I don't know. I think I'm kind of confused, but I'm fine.
That's all right. All right. So you pass it on.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna pass this one on.
Okay, it might be a little easier later on too, with more of them filled out. If just like a picture remains, you might be able to have an idea of kind of where one of them goes, right? So,
Yeah,
uh,
maybe.
yeah, I'll come back to you. Let me see. Let me go back to Jasmine. Jasmine, we called on you before, but you must have been away from the computer. Do you see any of these and kind of know where they go on the table?
Yeah, sorry again. My cat was distracting me, sorry. Let's see. Starch is an example of carbohydrate.
Are we sure? You sure about that?
Yep.
Good. I'm happy to see that you're sure. That is indeed true. Starch is an example of carbohydrate. Do you know the difference between starch and glucose?
I mean, I know that, like, potatoes have a starch.
Well, how about this? We know that glucose is this guy here, a very simple sugar. So if there's much of a difference, if
Oh,
start.
yeah. Is starch the one that has, like, more branches or something?
Well, I was basically just looking for it's a more complicated molecule. I don't really expect you to kind of know the formula and everything, but it is a more complicated carbohydrate. It has a lot of different glucose strung together.
Cool.
Okay.